Now to offer a perspective on next steps, and as former U.S. Navy JAG officer and former federal prosecutor Don Brown. Don, it is good to see you. Appreciate you joining us. Let's start broad. What is going on? Like, why are these activist judges fighting against election security so much? Why are lawmakers not acting, knowing that this is an issue that 80% of the American public is in support of, securing our elections?
Well, Terrence, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me tonight. And you're asking a very, very important question. I was involved in 3 legal teams battling the 2020 election fraud, including working alongside Sidney Powell, who's looking pretty smart right now. She's the one who first revealed the Smartmatic China connection, and now the president has revealed 220 million voter files have been compromised. But to your question, the judges don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. I mean, I've been on the inside, and I've seen evidence of 3 to 5% of the votes scraped from these ballot marking device machines in Georgia and Pennsylvania during 2020, all the way up to 10 o'clock when they shut things down. And it is indeed a vindication to that degree. But the judges, even in 2020, wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Either they said you don't have standing, they would use standing to dismiss cases, or in some cases they would say they weren't moot. It was just too hot of a potato. I was on the original legal team that led up to Ken Paxton filing a suit directly against Pennsylvania in the Supreme Court, you may remember, on the theory that Pennsylvania was violating its own voting laws and was trashing the rights for Texas residents to vote without having fraud and interference from another state. Only 2 members of the Supreme Court of the United States, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, were even willing to look at that case. John Roberts led the 3 Trump appointees into a position we're not going to touch it. It's been too hot of a potato for these judges. But what the president did last night, Terrence, is one of the most significant addresses in presidential history. It is the first time that a president of the United States has taken this on head on. And as my friend Neil W. McKay pointed out a moment ago, he's not running for a re-election anymore. He saw the election basically stolen from him in 2020. He's just trying to get it right. The American people deserve to know judges and certain politicians are content with the corrupt system. I hate to say it, but they are. I've been in debates with folks who tell me no judge ever found any evidence. Well, no judge ever looked for any evidence, Steve. And if you were a patriot lawyer like me, I've had some of my friends not only sanctioned, but prosecuted simply for raising questions. Sanctioned in Michigan, prosecuted in Georgia. So the whole system has been designed, the institutional system, to suppress the evidence of the corruption. The corruption is there. The Bible says the truth will set you free. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. I'm very proud of the president for his position last night and grateful to him for finally laying some of this evidence out for everybody to see.
To follow up what you're saying, the saying goes that light sanitizes, and President Trump definitely shedding light on this particular issue. It is a multifaceted and multi-layered issue. There's the political and the legal part of it, which you just kind of brought up. But then there's also the physical vulnerability of our voting machines. This intel report that President Trump has released says that Russia, China, Iran, North Korea all have the capability to compromise our election. For me, as a layman, that's the most concerning part of it. Yes, there's deep state stuff, but to me, that's so fundamental. That's basic.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, Terrence. The president laid out 5 problems: the CHICOM involvement, deep state, CIA, FBI covering up the CHICOM involvement. And number 3 is the vulnerability of our election machines. I have an op-ed that's scheduled to be released tomorrow in American Thinker talking about a case out of Georgia called Curling v. Rafflesberger, filed in 2018, heard before an Obama-appointed judge, Amy Totenberg, Nina Totenberg's sister. And in that case, a left-wing organization, Citizens for Effective Government, was asking the federal judge to force the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Rafflesberger, to force him to scrap the Dominion machines and go to paper ballots. That case was decided in October of 2020, and Judge Totenberg basically ripped the lack of reliability for those machines, said you can't trust them, that they have QR codes that cannot be verified. She ordered Rafflesberger and Dominion to get their act together. And then when this became an issue, Terrence, in the Trump election, just a few weeks later, she sealed the order. Well, I've got a op-ed coming out in American Thinker tomorrow to cite portions of that order. These machines can be penetrated, and even whether they're connected to the internet or not, the solution has got to be go back to paper ballots France uses paper ballots. Our states can use paper ballots. We must restore confidence in the system and go to a system that can't be, just infiltrated and just raped over the coals like the Chinese and other countries have done in getting sensitive voting records. We got to go to a different system so that we have absolute protection and confidence in the system. I say bring back paper ballots.
Don, I want to reach through the TV and kiss your forehead because I am all with you on bringing back paper ballots. And I would add to that, and I'd like to get your perspective, it's not just about bringing back the paper ballots, but in order to bring confidence back to our elections, we also have to make sure that those ballots are counted day of, that it's not a month later and we're still wondering who won.
Absolutely right. And while the Supreme Court did a good job on some cases, we had some couple of good 2A cases. We had a couple of good protection for women in sports cases. It failed miserably in that case coming out of Mississippi when it allowed Mississippi to continue to count ballots for 5 days after the election. Election day means election day. The longer an election is strung out beyond election day, the greater the possibility of fraud. And when you have these elections going out for 20 and 30 days, look at California, the result is always the same. The Democrats find enough votes. I call it the vote fairy. The vote fairy shows up for Democrat candidates and they win every time. We have got to, Florida, North Carolina, other states that are major states have the votes counted on the day of the election, and it needs to be consistent across the nation, because when you drag things out, you're asking for fraud. And President Trump is correct. There should be no mail-in ballots at all, except for active duty military deployed. That's got to come to an end as a recipe for fraud, and that's exactly what we've seen.
Don, before I let you go, the reality is President Trump is ultimately pushing the Save America Act. That's what a lot of this is about. That's really the way to try to secure our elections, at least in the short term, until we can fix the overall system. The Senate has really failed in that respect, which of course brings us to Markwayne Mullin, who is trying to kind of fix this. House Speaker Mike Johnson is looking at doing this through Reconciliation 3.0, basically finding a way to budgetarily implement some of these things. Markwayne Mullin talked a little bit about that earlier today as well.
With Secretary Lutnick, we are going to make our security enhancements mandatory. Meaning that if these states want a grant and they want to be reimbursed to work or to run federal elections, they're going to have to implement security issues. Just security issues.
Don, it's the power of the purse at work. Is this the only way that's going to really get some of these states on board to do the right thing when it comes to our elections?
Money talks, and other things walk. And I commend Markwayne for taking this position. The issue is, can we get it done through reconciliation? I've heard that our senior senator from here in North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who I challenged in Republican primary, is threatening to oppose these types of efforts if they're brought in through reconciliation. So we still have to have enough Republican backbone in the leadership of the United States Senate to get this done. But it's a step in the right direction. I do commend Secretary Mullin for his efforts here. And I think we do need to be aggressive on all fronts to do everything we can to secure our elections. The survival of our constitutional republic depends on it, Terrence. It really does.
Don, we'll have to leave the conversation there. It's always good to talk to you, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too, brother. Good to see you, Terrence.
Thank you. Likewise.